Stronger. Faster.
So I thought we'd do a little collaborative exercise just to get our creative juices flowing, where each of us would take turns throwing out an idea, and then each of us would build on it in turn, sort of riffing a creative open stream where I say we have a forest area of a continent that is full of trees that produce various narcotic fruits, and it's a tropical sort of environment.
So what sort of background of Fred Wheeler there?
Yeah. Somewhat, yeah. And what sort of effect would this environment have on the populace? And just let you sort of riff off what the populace would be made up of, and just feel free to get weird or bring it down a little, and we'll sort of build on it and build on it.
Staircase that looks like it's going straight into Fred's right ear, so I'm imagining little tripped out people like climbing up the stairs into his brain.
So Fred,
once you get into this brain, baby, there's no turning back.
What do you think the occupants of this forest would be?
Occupants of this forest, I think they're probably going to be over large heads. I'm thinking it's fruit. It's probably magical, and usually, you get some sort of strange, weird sort of vision when you're dealing with hallucinogen stuff. Let's forget about hallucinogen. It just literally makes everybody's heads look bigger, since some drugs do that. Let's just increase their head. I was thinking, it's the Red Queen from Alice in Wonderland. I think that size is appropriate. Really smart.
So you think the drug would sort of emphasize people's focus on heads, so enormous hats and things that accentuate your facial region would be the fashion.
Yep, brain power. I wouldn't say that they were necessarily going to be smart, but like a lot of
because their heads
drugs,
aren't actually bigger. They just appear bigger to anybody who eats the food and.
No, their heads actually grow bigger.
Oh, their heads are actually
grow bigger. Yeah, they think they're smarter because they've been taking these magical druggy fruits, but actually they're not. But they do have greater brain power. They just don't know how to use it. That was my sort of spin on that. In terms of what sort of colours you'd wear, I mean, seriously, if the world looks a bit strange and a bit out there, the chances are you'd be fine just wearing sort of plaid, and it would still come out like rainbow coloured. So
right. So they don't worry so much about pigments and stuff like that because the hallucinations take care of the colours for them.
Exactly.
Maybe patterns would be emphasised.
Possibly. Yeah.
I know that there's an island somewhere in the Pacific where the people there have color blindness, like pretty much everybody, just sort of genetically, and they're really good at diving for pearls and things at nighttime because they can see really well in the dark. And their artwork and stuff they produce there is in these garish sort of earth tones and ochres and things, but the patterns are quite intricate and fascinating because that's what they focus on, not color. We've got possible patterns and things like that, and things. How would that affect maybe the town architecture and stuff like that? Would they use locally sourced materials? Would they have weaving, that sort of thing? What do you reckon, Josiah?
I feel like, we'll get to patterns in a moment here, but I feel like something that would be, based on what Fred said, extraordinarily prevalent there is I imagine there would be a massive flumph population, right? Because if you have a bunch of people who have expanded capacity for brain power, but as Fred mentioned, are probably not using all of it, that's like a 5-course meal for a flumph, dude. They're gonna come by and devour that psychic energy. So I imagine that you have lots of flumphs hanging around the settlements where all the humans are and stuff, or whatever these people who are living here are. And yeah, as far as architecture and stuff goes, doors would probably be a lot bigger. Don't want to smash your head.
Flumphs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, flumphs don't really enjoy the sunlight, so they'd be sticking to shaded, like maybe they have pavilions and things like that, like everything's sort of cloth coverings over streets and things like that.
Yeah,
I could see
maybe
that.
it's even a symbiotic relationship where the flumphs are like
Maybe we've got
doing some type of service for the
we've got Arania.
That's what the flumphs
perhaps.
have led us all to believe. So
right.
Like the Arania, the spider people that can sort of shapeshift and things like that, and they have arcane abilities. They're not necessarily bad individuals. Like they're not an evil race that go out hunting and killing people. They get a bad rap, from sort of things that happened in Kalimshan and stuff in the Forgotten Realms. This doesn't necessarily have to be the Forgotten Realms, but if you had them creating canopies and things like that from their webs and things, and the flumph living happily underneath them. That could make an interesting symbiotic relationship between the two.
they also get a bad rap because generally anything spider is like, evil, or at least some monstrous spider that's trying to prey upon you.
I like the idea of the Arania have their zones where they go into it and they revert to spider form and just do Arania things. But when they're out in public, so with other races, they shapeshift into a humanoid form, just to a little bit
Just
spidery.
Arania things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what other races and activities could go on in this city? What sort of commerce and interaction would they have with other settlements and stuff? Would they be fully independent, or would they interact with other nations and things? What do you reckon, Esper?
I'm going to give a serious answer, as much as I've been joking around. Actually, when I play D&D and I create anything D&D related, I'm not really a goofer type. Actually, anyone who's watched my stuff, I actually like things that are more grounded and serious and have ties to like classic fantasy and mythology, and I really am into human emotions and human experience and inner conflicts, and these are very interesting things to me. Not that I don't think there's any room for humor or comedy. Actually, not at all. I just like the humor and the comedy to be like, nested within this kind of strong foundation where things have meaning to them. So I'm going to start off from that approach, because we have a lot of fantastical things going on. We have giant trees, and I keep looking at Fred's background, so that's what it is in my head. It's these what's that movie? It's Avatar forest, right? With various glowing flowers and fruits, and the people have big heads, and it's a psychedelic thing that influences them. So I would balance that out with something grounded, because if you stick with only the super fantastical, absurd things, then you risk the setting that you're developing or the region that you're developing turning into this kind of cheesy gimmick. Right? It's like, yeah, step on up to wacky forest land. So, and maybe that's the game you want to play. So don't let me dissuade you or kick over your sandcastle. But if it was me, I'd probably make the drug use part of their religious tradition. That's often what substance use or drug use has been historically. It almost feels kind of wrong to call it drug use, because there's a lot of kind of the dirty, taboo, criminal element.
Yeah, it's more like a shamanistic practice.
Could be shamanistic. Could be shamanistic. Didn't have to be, though, right? They could have temple-like buildings, and they're kind of this forward advancing society. I'm thinking in terms of like their technology and the administrative sophistication and whatnot.
So they could be using their enhanced brains for something as simple as business and accounting or banking or some such.
Sports, right?
Sports?
It has to play in some kind of way. There's a lot of strategy in sports. At least the biggest brain guy would be the coaches of the team. But look at the Harry Potter thing, Quidditch. You got to be real smart to play Quidditch. That's not a fool's game there. You know, I don't know. Maybe there's a bruiser position. I'm not very well versed in Harry Potter, but like I think it takes a pretty good amount of like cognition to play that game, right? You got to like think real fast and know where to zig and where to zag, and you got to focus and control. They fly on brooms, right?
Yep. True. I can imagine Arania would be pretty agile in the air, considering that they spin webs and things like that. And
so we have the big head people and the Arania people
and flumphs, floating flumphs.
And flumphs. Yeah, and see, I like flumphs, even though I don't really portray them cartoony-like. So in my head, the flumphs are these jellyfish-type creatures without the kind of like Adventure Time Rick and Morty look to them, but more actual like jellyfish things. But I think that could play in really well with religion, right? The flumphs could have like a certain rank or like position in like a religious structure, hierarchy, totem pole, however they want to configure, and the configuration, right? The flumph could have some kind of caste, or maybe the flumphs are almost like treated like
sacred,
like a angel or a celestial spirit, and there could be like historical figures, right, that received revelation or prophecy, and there's a lot of like philosophy and culture tied in with this, because you know, living in a forest, that's a pretty dangerous place to live. There's lots of things in the forest, like who knows what's in the deep of this forest. You know, not well-meaning, intelligent people that have been warped by the psychedelics, but nasty, dark monsters that have been warped by the psychedelics. And if there's flumphs, there's probably some other, like, horrific aberrations,
some
too.
swollen-headed Tyrannosaurus intelligent species that just rips the shred out of anything. That's that could be particularly
mind
nasty.
Flares,
yeah, or they're quasi-intelligent, like enough to where it gets them into trouble because they think they're smarter than they really are, and they like develop this really dangerous weapons or some such that they can't actually control or use with any amount of wisdom.
Right.
Now, you've asked me an original question that I've sort of skirted around.
That's fine. We're branching out into different territory. Yeah, I was thinking, actually, I've been dealing a lot lately with demi-planes, because I've been talking about the ethereal plane in a series on my channel lately. And I think this would be a perfect candidate for a demi-plane. And the flumphs would make perfect sense as being the architects of the demi-plane. So everybody else is basically there under their invitation. The Arani would be there to practice their culture and their arcane studies and things in peace, away from the prejudice of other people. You could possibly have some creatures of the Feywild who want to get away from being locked into the narrative and story element of their planes, so they don't have to keep playing out these stupid fairy tale things all the time, because they've seen the way that people can live their lives in non-sequential sort of roundabout way in the prime material plane, so they get away from that. But they're fey creatures in the prime material plane, so they get all this prejudice and stuff as well. So it could be a refuge for people to live the way.
Fey vibe in there.
Yeah. Well, look at that image and behind.
I mean, if you...
Oh, that's even worse.
It's layers of psychedelic. Oh my God.
We just looked into the rainbow curtain between the planes.
It's
God.
It's the realm behind the realm.
If you have a situation like that, then where the flumphs are like involved with your religion and significant in some way, and you have all these people with this excess mental energy, whether they're using it or not, obviously the flumphs are going to thrive on that. But then I guess it begs the question, like, what are they doing with all of that excess mental energy? So you could even have some sort of like hive mind structure with the flumphs like passing on into like some type of higher being, like an ascended flumph, or even like some type of fey creature that's trying to achieve something.
Or they're creating a living plane. They're building a god, like the floating corpses of gods in the astral plane, and the flumph are actually incarnating,
or resuscitating.
Yeah, I remember in 4th edition there was a living gate that was like a barrier between between the Far Realm and reality.
Yep.
And a band of gods during the Dawn War decided to mess with that, and they broke it, they shattered it, and the psychic power of the Far Realm went flooding into the, and all the aberrations and stuff came flooding into the prime material plane, and once the genie was out of the bottle, they couldn't stop it back in. Meanwhile,
I thought that was interesting lore.
It was really creative. That's right. And also there was a little known species called the quam, which were dwarf-like. Some of them had heads on both sides of their faces on both sides of their head. And they were obsessed with getting all those shards of the original living gate back together, because that was their goddess that they were living inside of in perfect harmony. Their creator was around them all the time, so they were living inside their god. And then it got shattered for no reason at all, and so they have this massive shard chip on their shoulder and have been floating around. And if they detect a shard of this, which could be anywhere, it could be in a magical item, it could be in a shard mind, they would extract it as their right to take back. So they make a very good bad guy with a very good purpose behind why they do what they do, but what they do is shockingly evil sometimes. It's like, well, there's a shard inside your child and we need it now. You have no right to it, sort of thing. It's like, well, my child is
maybe
gifted.
The shard is vital to the child living.
Right, yeah, there could be a warlock in that, or there could be a sorcerer, and that could be the source of their power.
Or it could just be like lodged in their heart. And the qualm the qualm has no qualms of just like extracting it out,
Yeah, so the quams show up and they're like they've got statues kind of like dwarves, but they have those, and they've got lilac and sort of purple hues to their skin and things. So they look quite interesting. And they fly around
Josiah
in these
made
ships.
me think of an idea, going back just a little bit. The flumphs could serve the role of like a confessor. You go to like a confession sacrament, and the flumph is there, and you have that interaction where it's like feeding off of you, but it's like taking something out of you in a ritualistic, thinking something psychic out of you in a ritualistic fashion.
Sin eaters.
Yeah, it's like taking away the evil.
Eaters of sadness and sin. I like it. You walk out of there like,
And this sets up for like a potential storyline where there's some dark secret going on amongst the flumphs, and I don't know if all the flumphs are in on it or if there's just this cabal of flumphs, and maybe they're like taking too much of the memory of the people, so that the people go back out and commit the same atrocity again. The person gets out of their ritual, and I feel so light and free. What was even bothering me?
You murdered my child, huh?
Come on, life's a carnival. Let's go.
That can't be true. I would feel something, I would have some memory of that.
The dark flumph secret cabal is like clandestinely creating the hive mind, or this like ballooning demi-plane thing. I don't know. Maybe it's you can connect really strange things. Like you mentioned the floating dead gods from this like ancient Dawn War. So they could be like their home base or alternate interplanar base is on that dead god, and they're like trying to grow a new demi-plane off of that god. It's like a sack that's swelling up like a bubble. It's part physical, but it's also part spiritual to compose the fabric of a plane.
I do like the idea of the flumphs being manifestations in reality of a multi-planar being. So the flumph that you see being a simple little jellyfish is actually just the almost like a orifice of a creature that's existing mostly in a mental state.
Yeah, the creature could even refer to them as, my whatever, my tendril, my finger, my... We'd probably have to look up a term that's like specific to weird...
They could have names like touch or embrace or caress and things like that,
What do you call the like individual little suction thingy on a cephalopod?
Sucker.
Okay, well that's not gonna fly.
No.
Let's go,
suckers.
Oh, yeah, suckers. Yeah, I like it.
So no matter how you think about that, it's not gonna work. My yeah,
Tendril?
there's got to be some word out there.
Tendril's pretty
Tendril's
good.
not bad. Yeah.
So they've got an agenda. So we have some potential conflict there, which is always good for a role-playing setting, and it makes sense that it's got a logically consistent background to it. They've got a reason for being there. It's a bit weird, it's a bit nonsensical, but once you get over that, you realize, oh, this is actually a situation where there's potential for character progression, for my character to fulfill their destiny, and I always feel like everything needs to tie back into the characters that play there. So if you've got a vision of your character being a world famous blacksmith or something, or reassembling a magical hammer from their ancestors, or whatever your character's progression is in your head, there should be room for it in your setting without having to alter it too much, because otherwise the players are not going to get very invested, and they are going to lampoon and just basically just play it for giggles. So,
yeah. That's how you get murder hobos.
Yeah. So it's okay to have a
from
nonsense.
Nowhere, I'm going nowhere. I care about nothing. I'm just
nihilism
running around, ganking and raiding. Woo!
I always find that
tie the setting into the characters. Absolutely.
Myconids and flumphs are a perfect combination in my mind. The Myconids form this circle of wisdom, and in this setting where you have the local populace who have these swollen heads, lots of intelligence but no wisdom. The counterpoint to that would be the wisdom of the Myconids without much action to put it into use. So, that could make an interesting potential solution that the characters would make a bridge for. They see that, you should be working together, but the Myconids might actually be persecuted or something by the people there.
Maybe the Myconids are even the source of the drug production. And it's like forcibly taken away from them, perhaps. But these like flumphs that are like taking away the memories of like the people that are tasked with going out, so they don't remember how like violently it was that they were actually seizing whatever it is that they need for production of this drug. So everyone just is like, everything's all good, and the flumphs are doing this, but they know it's for like a higher purpose or something, so they're justifying it in their own way.
It's true too, because Myconids are responsible for creating new biospheres and environments in the Underdark by breaking through rocks and mixing in streams and things like that, and creating new ecosystems. So that would make sense if you're creating a demi-plane that you wanted to make an ecosystem for. It would be pretty easy to import Myconids who would just go about their business.
I like it. I like the dynamic between we need a name for the big head people, because big head people doesn't sound so cool. But I like the dynamic of big head people that are high intelligence but not so wise. The Myconids that are very wise and very intuitive but not very intelligent. And how the intelligent race, treats them poorly, or looks down upon them. Because that's something that really happens. It's easy, quote unquote, to belittle and bully people that are less intelligent, because intelligence is pretty quantifiable, right? You can come up with some tests and you can kind of see, these people do better on tests, and the big head people, look at the buildings they build and the architecture they can plan out and the technology that they can create. So it gets
I've just found out this name popped into my head of Korrid, and I just looked up, and Korrids are known as the Dancing Folk. We're a small Fae race, a race of Fae with a special connection to the earth. They're grey-skinned and sort of dun-coloured. They've got big, fluffy heads with big moustaches that stick off to the side, and they've got like puck, satyr-like feet.
Right.
Yeah, those guys are weird.
They might be too hot-tempered and violent, though, for this.
Well, all the more reason for them to be manipulated by people that mess with your brains.
The flumphs take away their most violent portion of their temperament. Mm-hmm. But wisdom is not so easily quantifiable. I mean, obviously in metagame it is, right? I have a 10 wisdom, I have a 16, but in the game world, it's not so easily quantifiable. And
wisdom
often spark controversy and fighting and even schisms in culture or whatever area.
Yeah, I think that the mechanics of wisdom in Dungeons and Dragons are about perception. So it's your ability to observe more things in the environment and be aware of them. So that's why it's a chief component of clerics, because clerics are constantly aware of the whispering of the divine. So the signs and portents that they see around them all the time, and their empathy for other people, looking for, what's bothering them, what's ailing them, what their spiritual needs are, and things like that. So the unspoken stuff that clerics pick up on. Clerics, when you think about it, because of that wisdom and because of that ability to see things in the environment, would be spotting traps, checking, like, people are lying to them, people are concealing things from them. They would see leads and resources and things like that. Like, they would actually be pretty good leader positions in your adventuring party, and I don't see that often enough, that the paladin or the cleric is actually taking the lead. They might not necessarily be the most charismatic person, but they certainly would be the person in the party that everybody would be listening to more often than any others. So the cleric would be like, I think he's lying, I think there's something in the back.
Yeah, the counselor role, the advisor role, the wise man.
Well, the bard is like, blah, 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 everything's great. The cleric's like, everything's not good. And the fighter is like,
2, cleric, don't spoil it for them.
And the fighter's like, do I kill him? No. All right.
Now, with all this discussion about these things, but certainly flumps seem to be taking up a large portion of the discussion.
As they should.
My question to you is, what happens if suddenly 4 flumps are talking to each other and arguing about something at the same time? And is that entertainment for YouTube? Essentially, what does a flumph sound like? Because every time I think about a flumph, I just think I can just make farting noises. That's
according to the official flumph description, they communicate telepathically. And the noises that they do make audibly are just the sound of the gases and air propulsions.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
I want to see a giant flump who's in charge of them, who when he moves, it's the sound of a really deep foghorn that's really scary and intimidating. Yeah, exactly.
It's just not working today. It's broken. My flump is broken. Darn it. All right, okay.
Can't use that antiperspirant spray.
That's a flatulence.
Oh, your magnificent flatulence. Your bellowous mass.
Has the innate spellcasting of Stinking Cloud.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that would be an issue in the town too. Recently, a friend of mine sent me some snacks over from China, and one of them was a vending machine lot of what they call stinky tofu. This is one of the 3 treasures of the Hunan province. I'm never ever going to Hunan. I'm going to put that on record right now, because apparently the smell of the stinky tofu wafts over you as you're walking through the street, which is supposed to be some sort of a draw card. Imagine a place which is entirely devoted to making really, really strong blue cheese, right? So stinky tofu, oh boy. I'm never going to eat it again. I can proudly say that if the apocalypse comes, I would eat the ass out of a rat, no problem. Skunk steak, easy by comparison. This stuff, as it was going through my digestive system, it reeked the entire way. It percolated. Asparagus has got nothing on it. So I imagine a town that is, stocked full of flumps would have nuances of cabbage and sulfur,
an abundance of natural gas as a resource.
Yeah, do not, no open flames in this area. Flumps live here.